welcome to Unity of Chattanooga on this glorious Father's Day. Let's rise and shine, greet our neighbors, and understand that wherever you are, God is. Come on, let's greet your neighbors. Hey, everybody at home.
And our senior minister, Rev Doug, Werth. It's my pleasure to welcome you today on this beautiful Sunday morning for Unity of Chattanooga's Sunday celebration service. Whether you're here in person or joining us online from your home, you are welcome here. If you're watching the service on Facebook, please let us know that you are there by greeting each other in the comments section, and be sure to give us a thumbs up. You can also share this service with friends who you think may be encouraged by the Unity message of practical Christianity. Unity of Chattanooga is a spiritual community inviting each of us to awaken to our divine nature through love, prayer, personal transformation, and service. There is a place here for everyone, no matter where you are on your spiritual journey. Now, even though Reverend Doug's going to be speaking about Father's Day today, we don't want to overlook an important holiday that's taking place today, and we want to honor Juneteenth, National Independence Day. Juneteenth calls us as a nation to commemorate the end of slavery in the rebellious states. Specifically, Juneteenth had its origin in Texas on June 19, 1865, after President Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation. On that day, Union Army General Gordon Granger proclaimed freedom for the enslaved people in Texas with the reading of General Order Number 3. Emancipation for all enslaved people was declared later that year with the 13th Amendment to the Constitution. The newly freed people celebrated, and within a few years, the African Americans in other states were celebrating Juneteenth as well. And last year, President Joe Biden signed the legislation that made Juneteenth a federal holiday. Today, many Americans celebrate this holiday with prayer and religious services, speeches, family gatherings, parades, and festivals. We commemorate the past to build a better future by affirming the inherent worth and dignity of every person, as we are all created in the image of God. We go forth on this day to be thankful for the diversity of races and cultures in this world that enrich our lives in ever-widening circles of community. We see the presence of the divine in everyone and live our lives in such a way to demonstrate equality for all people. Happy Juneteenth. Now is the time in our service where we open our hearts and our minds to that divine presence within, and we call on our prayer chaplain, Keith Noyes, who will lead us in prayer.
You to settle in. Close your eyes if you wish. Take a nice, deep, infilling breath. Breathing in from Mother Earth through the soles of your feet. Up through all your chakras, out your crown chakra as you exhale. Another deep infilling breath. Feel your heart opening. Feel that connection. Father's Day. Bring to mind anyone who has been a father or a father figure in your life. And just open your heart and let those feelings flow. Let that love flow. The gratitude flow. Forgiveness, whatever rises in your heart. Let it flow out to them. That loving energy, that nurturing energy that you received, you can return right now. Prayer is your wireless connection to them. Your essence flows from your heart in gratitude and thankfulness. Memories flow. Surrounded by that love of family, that fatherly presence. Embrace it. Embrace the love that you are, the love that you bring forth. Keep that heart open. Keep that energy flowing to anyone and everyone who's been a father figure in your life. Cherish the memories. Breathing the love you are. Exhaling in peace. To all the father figures in your life, we bless you. We honor you. We cherish your presence, even if you're no longer with us. And we give thanks and gratitude for each and every moment we spend with you. And so it is. Amen.
There's a calm surrender to the rush of day, when the heat of the rolling world can be turned away. An enchanted moment, and it sees me through. It's enough for this restless warrior just to be with you. And can you feel the love right now? It is where we are. It's enough for this wide-eyed wanderer that we've got this far. And can you feel the love right now? Oh, it's laid to rest. It's enough There's a rhyme and reason to the wild outdoors when the heart of the star-crossed Voyager beats in time with yours. Not voyeurs, voyagers. And can you feel the love right now? How it's laid to rest. It's enough to make kings and vagabonds believe the very best. It's enough to make kings and vagabonds believe the very best. He's so silly. He's a kindergartner today.
The Lion King, how appropriate for Father's Day. Yeah, that's great. That's great. Wow. And I just want to thank Keith for that beautiful prayer this morning and for Phaedra for stepping in. It really is a community. And for those of you watching in TV or watching through the internet, and for all of you out here this morning, Melissa gave me this tie this morning. It's the masculine divine tie, divine masculine. So it's appropriate that we wear it today and wear it proudly. Yeah. Well, today is Father's Day. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. It's now the familiar beginning of what's become known as the Lord's Prayer. It's found in the 6th chapter of Matthew, in the middle of 3 chapters that have become known as the Sermon on the Mount. It's the beginning of Jesus' ministry after his temptation in the wilderness, where he starts to teach his disciples and a large gathering crowd. Oliver Wendell Holmes, the great Supreme Court judge, said, "My religion can be summed up in the first 2 words of the Lord's Prayer, our Father." But those 2 first words immediately created a firestorm of controversy with the ruling priests and hierarchy of the Hebrew culture. You see, in the northern tribes, Elohim king was remote and feared just as their king was. You never saw the king, but if something was going on in one of the provinces, in came the army. Now, just to give you an idea of what they thought of Elohim, once a year the chief priest went into the inner sanctuary into the temple where they believed that God lived. He went in with offerings for the forgiveness of people's sins, whatever they may or may not have been, and the priests tied a rope around his leg to drag him out in case God killed him. Now, in the southern tribes, Jehovah God was a little more friendly and accessible. And that's the God that walked and talked with Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. But what we all know happened is when they ate the apple, Jehovah said, "You're out of here and don't come back. And by the way, life's going to be a lot harder from here on in." Well, the Greek and Roman civilizations of that day were very similar, with a variety of gods, with behavior similar to the powerful men of their culture who controlled things and meted out consequences if you stepped out of line. Zeus was the Greek king of the gods. He ruled Mount Olympus. He was the god of the sky, thunder, lightning, law and order, and of course your fate. And he was depicted as a regal, mature man, sturdy build, big old black beard. And he had this royal scepter that would dispense justice with lightning bolts. and his sacred animals were the eagle and the bull. His brother was Poseidon, the god of the sea, floods, droughts, earthquakes. Poseidon was the earth shaker and had a similar tough guy build and beard, and he had a trident, with stickers on the end. The Romans had a similar structure of gods with Jupiter as their king of the gods. Then there was Neptune, similar to Poseidon, Mars, the god of war, and Vulcan, the god of fire and volcanoes. Are you getting the picture here? The entire melting pot of cultures that surrounded the Mediterranean those days pictured life controlled by powerful male god figures who were remote and feared. For the Hebrews, God was viewed as an anthropomorphic male being on a greater dimension who was all-powerful, remote, judgmental, harsh, and their religion used animal sacrifices and taxes for appeasement and for glory, which, by the way, also supported a large hierarchy of priests, scribes, and rulers. Jesus had a completely different understanding of God. When he said, "Our Father," "our" was inclusive. That meant God was everybody's Father. The Greeks, the Romans, even the Samaritans, which is another story, okay? For there is neither Jew nor Greek, neither bond nor free, chosen nor unchosen, as the Apostle Paul later reiterated. You see, with one word, he ends the concept of a chosen race, about spiritual superiority from any one group of human beings over another. He cuts away the illusion that the members of any nation, any race, any territory, class, color are, in the sight of God, superior to any other group. And the priests didn't like that. You see, the Hebrews were a very exclusive people. Their genealogy was important to them, and they felt that they were chosen by God because they were better than everyone else. They believed their God was superior, in other words, stronger than everyone else's God, and they wanted to keep it that way. So don't give us any of this our business. The word Jesus used for father in Aramaic was Abba, which had a meaning closer to daddy. It had a feeling of intimacy with qualities of love, forgiveness, strength, and protection, all combined. It was the polar opposite of a stern, wrathful, remote, and judgmental God of the Hebrew culture. Here, in one word, Jesus lays down once and for all the relationship between God and man is that of father and child. It cuts out any possibility that that deity could be the relentless and cruel tyrant or despot that was often pictured in the theologies of that day. And so with two words, he swept away 99% of the old theology, with its avenging God, its chosen and favored people and classes, its eternal hellfire, and all the other structure and paraphernalia of man's imagination and creation. God exists, and the eternal, all-powerful, all-present God is the loving Father of mankind. To make matters worse, you didn't need animal sacrifices, taxes, grand temples, and priests to experience the God in your life. He introduced that prayer with these words: "Go into your closet and shut the door, and pray to your Father who is in secret, and your Father who sees in secret will reward you openly." This interpretation was too much. The outside force of fear and punishment, protection and conquering of enemies, it's all gone. What do you mean? There's no such thing as the big guy up there with lightning bolts ruling heaven and judging whether you get in. Fear not, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. Heresy, they said. No hierarchy, no threats. Everybody has the power within themselves. What a contrast between the power of physical force that men knew and were using and the spiritual power of love that Jesus knew and was teaching. That gap between power and love associated with men and with male figures continues to this day. Martin Luther King Jr. noted it this way. He said, one of the great problems of history is that the concepts of love and power have usually been contrasted as opposites, polar opposites, so that love is identified with a resignation of power and power with a denial of love. We've got to get this thing right. What is needed is a realization that power without love is reckless and abusive, and love without power is sentimental and anemic. Power at its best is love implementing the demands of justice. And justice at its best is power correcting everything that stands against love. It is precisely this collision of immoral power and powerless morality which constitutes the major crisis of our time. This gap between power and love is historical. It's cultural. And it's a dilemma that every man, every father, and every caregiver has faced. We all know boys are taught at a young age to be tough and to deny their emotions. And there are a few role models that demonstrate how to balance the masculine characteristics of strength, focus, and willpower with the spiritual qualities of compassion, forgiveness, surrender, and love. And on the horns of that dilemma is every one of our fathers. Now, some did it better than others. And as we talk about Father's Day this morning, it's sometimes a difficult subject for some. Often, however, we're there a greater and hard to find gift from another father. Charles Fillmore, Unity's co-founder, his father abandoned him and his mother when Charles was just a young boy, leaving him alone and crippled from an ice skating accident to fend for himself on the American frontier. He was raised in an Indian reservation in the northern part of the country. But this adversity ignited a spirit of self-reliance and self-determination in young Charles, and together with his natural curiosity, allowed him the freedom to discover for himself a life of abundance and deep spirituality. But as we all know, it wasn't easy. Many of you are familiar with Wayne Dyer, the psychologist and PBS presenter. His father abandoned his family when Wayne was just very young, leaving him and his younger brother to grow up in an orphanage. And although Wayne found the abilities within himself to do well in this material world, working his way through college and earning a doctorate, in his 20s he found himself overweight, a functioning alcoholic, a smoker, and upon reflection, a person with a lot of bitterness towards his father. Well, he did some research, found his father's grave, and sat beside it one day talking to him as if his father was there and listening. And in the process, he thanked his father for giving him life. He forgave him and realized that it was his early adversity that had propelled him not only to succeed, but to search for greater answers. Shortly after that, he stopped drinking and smoking because he no longer enjoyed them. He took up jogging, dropped the excess weight, and wrote his first book. His father had taught him forgiveness. And from forgiveness came great gifts that he shared with the world for many years. You see, through adversity, both Charles and Wayne found a deep source of strength and comfort, what we might call a spiritual connection. And there is a quiet power, there is a balance, and a wisdom that comes to a man who has made this inner connection, what we might call the Father within, which becomes a spiritual practice that guides him in every situation. I'm reminded of a picture of George Washington on bended knee during the darkest days of the Revolutionary War. I'm reminded of the powerful Richard Daley, who was the mayor of Chicago, forever it seemed, and the head of a political machine that ran the city for decades. He attended Mass every morning before work. So how do we balance power and love in our everyday lives? Well, one day many years ago, Penny and myself and our daughter Christine, we were attending a circus being held in a very large field. And when the show was over and we're leaving along with the crowd, we came upon and saw this very young little boy looking backwards in the crowd, searching with tears in his eyes. Now, I was about to go over and help when a very tall young man with a son in each hand and his wife following behind carrying the third one, bent down on one knee and eye to eye looked at this guy, this little guy, and said, "Hey, partner, what's the problem?" And the boy looked at him and said, he couldn't get it out. "Lost your mom, huh? Well, what do you say we go find her? We'll put you right up here on my shoulder so you can see everybody, so you can see her, and you just point her out, okay?" And with that, he picked up that little guy, put him on his shoulder, and everybody turned around. And as they started back into the crowd, his oldest son reached up and gave that little guy his cotton candy. That's how you do it. When I was growing up, my grandfather and my grandmother lived right down the block. Now, my grandfather never said much, but piece by piece over the years, stories emerged. He grew up in a rural family in Pennsylvania, and by the age of 10 or 12 was the oldest of 5 hungry mouths to feed. And there wasn't enough to go around. And he was told that since he was the oldest, he had to go and find his way in the world. And there was another farm nearby who needed help and would provide for his room and his board. Well, apparently he did very well, and after a while found work in a factory nearby. At 19, he eloped with my then 16-year-old grandmother, who, according to his brothers, was the prettiest girl he ever saw. Now, my mother and her sister came shortly after that, but when the Depression came in 1929, he lost his job. And he found food for the family by riding his bicycle to nearby fields and scavenging leftovers from recent harvests. Now, by this time, he'd learned to repair bicycles and had a shed in the back of his house where people from all over town came to get their bicycles fixed. And if they needed another one, well, then he could make one from the spare parts that he had in the back. And on Saturday nights, he earned extra money at the town dance by keeping the troublemakers away. Apparently, according to his brothers, if he was at the door, there was no trouble. And if there was, it didn't last very long. Well, times got better. He got his old job back running a turret lathe in the factory. And I'm not sure why he turned down several supervisory positions that were offered him, preferring to work with his hands. But when difficult labor management situations developed, as they sometimes do in any organization, he was often asked by management and the union to sit down and offer his opinion. Well, by the time I came along, he was a volunteer fireman, and there was no greater thrill than riding in the fire truck during the summer firemen's carnival parades, and later selling hot dogs with the other firemen in the firemen's tent. You see, I spent a lot of time with him in that shed fixing bicycles, and when I needed a larger one, he'd just say, "You know where the frames are, you know where the sprockets and the handlebars are. Go pick out the parts you want, make your bike." I learned an awful lot about life from a guy who didn't have a lot in the way of material possessions and never said very much. My dad worked as an accountant and wasn't too involved with hands-on things like my grandfather, but he was always there in the background and in some supporting role. When I was in Little League, he kept the books for the organization and he came to every game. When I was in the Boy Scouts, he helped out the Scoutmasters and drove us to all the outdoor activities. When I was in high school, I was very active in sports, and he came to every football game and every wrestling match, and I can still hear his voice of encouragement as I would step out onto the mats. We didn't have an awful lot when I was growing up, and I missed the material things that many of my friends had. Up until the age of 12, we lived kind of in a rundown house with rat fights in the walls, tin foil stuck in the floorboards, and curtains that blew away from the walls in the wintertime. And I was pretty angry about that for a long time, until I learned much later in life that my younger brother had been very sick when he was a baby. And without insurance, my parents worked for many years to pay off those hospital bills. But by the time I was in high school, they found a way to build a nice new home and eventually pay for college for my brother and myself. And much later, during a casual conversation with my grandmother, I learned that my dad had turned down several job promotions so that we could stay in our hometown, be close to my grandparents, and go through school with our friends without interruption. And as I think about that today, it was my dad that provided for our needs quietly, giving us stability as we grew up and the things that money can't buy, allowing us to find our own strength and create our own lives. That's the way you do it. You know, on the surface, Father's Day is about saying thanks to our dads for all that they've done and for all that they've been to us. But on a deeper level, it's also about coming to peace with those things in our upbringing that didn't seem to work very well. It's about realizing that those qualities of strength, courage, and loving protection that perhaps weren't there to our satisfaction with our earthly fathers have always been there from our Heavenly Father. We just have to be open to find them. Find them within ourselves, not in an outside person who makes all things right so that we can be happy. I want to close this morning with a story of my own. When my daughter was in high school, I'd just gone to bed and she came in and wanted to talk. And although I was tired, This was a rare opportunity to talk with her. For anybody who's had a teenager in high school, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And I didn't want to miss the opportunity. So we went into her room. She propped herself up against the pillows on her bed, and I sat down on the foot of the bed, cross-legged, and just listened. And what poured out was teenage angst, with all the questions of what different friends wanted and did, and the social questions of the day. Now, many of the friends' names were unfamiliar, and quite frankly, she used so many pronouns in what she was talking about that I really couldn't follow it at all. And after 15 minutes or so, she looked at me and she said, "So, Dad, what should I do?" I didn't have a clue. I didn't know what to tell her. But I knew that there was another power available to her that did. And so I looked at her and I said, "Well, honey, what do you want to do?" She sat back with a jolt, lit up like a light bulb, and said, "I never thought of that. Of course." Now, I'm not sure what answers she came up with, but she seemed relieved, and I went back to bed, puzzled, but thankful that she felt better. And several days later, I got a card from her. Now on the front of it, it says, "Remember, you can do anything you set your mind to." So she'd been with us for a while. She knew how we thought. Here's what it says. "Dear Dad, thank you so much for the talk last night. I really needed someone to talk to, and you were there to help me out and just listen. You also managed to clear up a lot of questions that have been wandering aimlessly through my head. Who would have thought such a simple question, 'What do I want?' could answer so many mind-boggling questions. As you may know, it's always been hard for me to come to you with a personal crisis of mine, especially when it comes to boys." You think? "But after last night, you helped me to fall asleep with a clear mind, and I felt like a huge load had been lifted off my shoulders. I was wrong when thinking I couldn't talk to you about these certain types of things. You were a real pro with great advice. The best part was how comfortable I felt when talking to you. I'm so lucky to have you. I can get through this. I'm so lucky to have you as my father. You're so understanding and have always given me the courage I need to do whatever my heart desires. You've backed me up 110%. If nobody else was there, all I had to do was turn around and you'd always be right there. With a great big old bear hug. I was known for bear hugs in those days. I know I don't stop and say thank you half as much as I ought to for all the things you've given me and done for me. It's no wonder why us daughters always want to marry our daddies. Thanks for everything, Christy." Well, that night, she got what she needed. Not from me, but from her Heavenly Father within. And I can rest assured, as her earthly father, that at least this time, I helped her connect to a source that will always lead her to a higher and a better life. Well, today is Father's Day. So I would encourage every one of you to take some time later today and say thanks to your father, whether he's a phone call or whether he's a prayer away. He'll appreciate it, and you will too. And so now let's take a few moments and go within and shut the door and pray to our Father within. Our Father, who art in heaven. I would encourage you to simply open your mind and open your hearts right now. And know that there is a guiding and loving presence with you always, available in every moment. As close as your hands, as close as a thought. And so as we invite this presence in, I pray you'll be our eyes and watch us where we go and help us to be wise in times when we don't know.
Let this be our prayer when we lose our way. Lead us to a place, guide us with your grace, to a place where we'll be safe.
I pray we'll find your light and hold it in our hearts. And when stars go out each night, remind us where you are.
Let this be our prayer when shadows fill our day. Lead us to a place, guide us with your grace. Give us faith so we'll be saved.
We ask that life be kind and watch us from above. We hope each soul will find another soul to love.
Let this be our prayer, just like every child needs to find a place. Guide us with your grace. Give us faith so we'll be safe. Need to find a place. Guide us with your grace. Give us faith so we'll be saved.
Thank you, God. And thank you, Father. And so it is. Amen. And we want to thank all those artists who have done the prayer so well. Thanks, ladies. Perfect. Well, this is the time in our service when we get to give back, when we get to experience the law of circulation. And it's really all about opening those feelings within us and giving to that which we want to grow. And so we also know that every morning, every Sunday morning, there is a wide following on the internet. And for those of you watching us on Facebook this morning, we would also encourage you to take out that checkbook and send in a gift, which will help these messages and this church to go on in the days and the weeks and the months ahead. So let's take those tithes and those offerings and those gifts in our hands and just repeat our love offering statement. Together, divine love, through me, blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. I give in love, and I receive in abundance.
I am unlimited. I am divine. I am source energy, completely mine. Aware in consciousness that all you feel, so lack can never be. I'm holding you. I am unlimited. I am divine. I am source energy, completely mine. Aware in consciousness that all you feel, so lack can never be. I'm whole in you.
So we give thanks for these tithes and these offerings, so freely given from a heart filled and overflowing with joy. And they go forth to bless each and every person here, through our families, through our friends, through our workplaces, going forth to touch the lives with grace and with truth. And for this, we are so grateful. Thank you, God.
So lack can never be. I'm whole in you.
Y'all putting on a show today, huh?
So we have just a few announcements that we need to make today. To remind everybody that we have midweek spiritual boost available each week on Wednesdays at 4 o'clock, and that's with our midweek Faith Lift podcast featuring Shannon LeBrun and Rev Doug on our Facebook page. And you know, that's a lively conversation. It's well worth the time. Rev Doug is teaching a series called Unity 101 on Zoom on Wednesday evenings at 7 p.m. The class is a requirement if you would like to become a new member at Unity of Chattanooga. And you're also welcome to attend if you just want to learn more about Unity and what we believe. You can sign up in the back if you're here in person today to get a Zoom link emailed to you. And if you're watching us online, you can send an email to contact@unityofchattanooga.org and we'll get you a link also. We have a prayer box back on the center table, and you can write down any special prayer requests that you have and place that in the box. We are also happy to have our prayer chaplains pray with you in person. Those people are here today, and they have a purple shawl on. Prayer requests may also be submitted via email to contact@unityofchattanooga.org. The board has started a brand new opportunity for our community and fellowship, and that's a get-together during the week on Thursday evenings at 6 p.m. at Whole Foods on Manufacturers Road in the upper mezzanine. It's a casual get-together with like-minded people, and maybe you'll find that enjoyable. Next week is our potluck, but before that, as we're bringing our service to a close, I want to say that we hope you will stay and join us for fellowship afterwards. Today we are serving up a special breakfast of pancakes for Pop to celebrate Father's Day. Please stand now and join us in singing the peace song.
God is not out there on a cloud judging you whether you will go up or down. God is in healing.